Friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Today with Tally. The mission and goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and search Today with Tally. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the program as well. Ladies and gentlemen, your host of the evening, Mr. Brian Tally.
Welcome back to Today with Tally podcast, where we have real-life value to the lives of everyday people. We are on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Anchor FM, Spotify, and About Face Radio. Simply search Today with Tally and be sure to like, share, and subscribe to get every episode and stay up to date with the latest and greatest our guests in this show have to offer. Now, folks, today we celebrate day 160 of this brand new podcast in our 105th episode. That's right, 105 episodes in 160 days. Folks, are you a business owner? Look, if you are, I'm talking directly to you right now. Do you have some gear? Do you have merchandise? Do you have business services? Perhaps an event that you need to get out to the general public? Email me today, thetallybill@gmail.com. That's thetallybill@gmail.com. Let's advertise your business right here on this podcast. We have some serious engagement going on right now on all of our social media platforms, and we can help get the word out about your business and everything that you do as an entrepreneur. Let me help you reach your goals. Let's put a marketing plan together and develop a strategy to take your business to the next level. Now, folks, I want to tell you a little bit about a company that I recently came across, Hair XT. Hair XT has offered all-natural hair growth solutions since 2011. Their powerful hair growth vitamins and topical serum use a unique three-tier approach to regrow your hair, protect the hair you have, and prevent future hair loss. The vitamins contain essential ingredients for growing and repairing hair, while the serum promotes blood flow to the scalp and creates an optimal environment for hair growth. Hair XT's all-natural, drug-free formula has no side effects and is 100% guaranteed to work. See for yourself today and visit them online at hairxt.com. That's hairxt.com. Folks, we have a very special guest joining us on today's program. Margie Taylor is the mother of Army Specialist Joey Lenz. Joey died February 1st of 2022 while sleeping in his barracks at Fort Hood. Several indicators contributed to his death, including a toxic and hostile leadership, prescription drug interaction, depression, and anxiety. His heart was extremely enlarged due to the environment, mental stress, and the drugs that he was prescribed. This was all preventable, and intervention could have saved his life. Physicals are mandated annually, but do not require EKGs, neurological tests, and blood work for our active duty service members, and are basically a self-report sign-off without any exam. Consistent counseling with preventative actions for drug interactions and over-the-counter drugs should be a part of the prescription distribution, as well as routine lab work. There should be no retribution for any service member reporting a physical or mental concern of any other service member. Margie is now on a mission to update current law and policy regarding medical and health protocols for our active duty military. And with that, we are honored to be joined by Margie Taylor. How are you, ma'am?
Oh, I'm a little anxious, but I'm fine.
First and foremost, I want to offer my sincerest condolences to your son and the tragic loss. We're nearing that 1-year anniversary. I know this has got to be a very, very difficult time for you and your family. But what you're doing is extremely honorable and it's extremely admirable. And I'm sure your son, Joey, is very proud of you and what you are doing now to try to update health and medical protocols when it comes to our active duty service members.
Yes, it's a huge challenge. And I feel that everything that I endured in the last year and everything that I've done in my life has prepared me to move forward and go make this a mission, and I'm not going to stop until I get this accomplished to save lives.
Now, tell us a little bit about your son, Joey.
Joey was 32 years old when he died. He was what I thought, a healthy young man, fun-loving. He was involved in Frisbee golf, Madden games. He was a gamer. He was very well liked. He always said he didn't have friends, but that actually wasn't true. I don't know why he said that, but he was very well loved by his Army peers, the other soldiers, by his leadership, minus one person, by his classmates. He went to Willis High School, graduated in 2008. And some of his friends from 5th grade are still his friends 22 years later. That says a lot for somebody in their character. Mm-hmm. He cared deeply for animals, very deeply for animals, cats, dogs, and kids. All he wanted in life was to have kids, a cat, and a dog. He never really said anything about a girlfriend or a wife. He even asked me about being a surrogate, getting a surrogate so he could have kids, because that was the one thing he wanted to do. We had many conversations about that, and I told him he had plenty of time not to worry about that, to just stay in his lane and do his job in the Army. He loved being in the Army. He loved the guidance. He loved all the structure. I did not know at the time that he was in a toxic environment. He kind of kept that quietly, but apparently other soldiers did know. And after his death, they told me about it and told me I needed to seek justice for Joey, because they all loved him. They all thought he was fabulous. Whenever anybody had a bad day, he gave them his smile. He was very well liked. He was known as Lights Out Lenz because he was always the life of the party. Everybody wanted him around. He was just a genuine guy. Even though he was 32, he acted like he was younger, in his 20s. He just was fun-loving, very simple. But he had a lot of anxiety. He was a shy kind of guy, but not around his friends. He did not like to speak out in groups. He would have gone up a level to be a sergeant, and he was working that way during COVID because everything was on Zoom calls, and he felt better about that. And when he was preparing himself to go to the next level of rank is when they went back to in person. So he decided he didn't want to do that. So he stayed at a specialist level for the time being. But everybody enjoyed being around him. And I did not know the heavily toxic environment he was in.
How many years had your son Joey been in the Army?
He enlisted in September 2017 and died February 1st, 2022.
Now, you say that Fort Hood, his command, had some toxic leadership. Now, that's not the first time I'm hearing things about that type of condition, especially in Fort Hood. Fort Hood has made the news an awful lot lately and over the years about toxic leadership. Do you have any elaboration on that?
His commanding officer was toxic, and everybody knew that. And in fact, this commanding officer, Shane Boyd, was disciplined severely. And from what I understand, asked to chapter out of the Army at one point and then was allowed back in. He has since been reassigned. He was reassigned shortly after Joey's death. But I do know that there's, of course, the Vanessa Guillen family. That's made a lot of news. But there's also been other things going on. There's been rapists. There's been serial killers. I am finding out a lot of things since Joey's death that I was not knowledgeable about. I am friends with the gal who's the administrator of the Fort Hood Fallen Facebook page that posts a lot of these things. Joey knew of a serial killer at Fort Hood. And he shared that information with a few people, not the name of the person, but that he was following them. And he knew he was getting close to exploiting them, so he backed off a little. There's a lot of dangerous things going on at Fort Hood. People go missing. People are afraid. Joey wanted out of there the more he was there, because that was his home base, Fort Hood. The only time he left was for 3 months when he was deployed to South Korea, and that was October 2019, and he came back February 2020.
I see. Now, that's pretty incredible, stuff right there. Some serious, accusations about serial killers and all that stuff, perhaps, or at least one on that base. Did he ever express deep concern to you about perhaps what he knew and what he was finding out?
He did talk about it. I don't know the name of the person. I don't know the details, and he also talked about it to several other people on base.
Yeah.
So I am still looking through his phone to find out more information.
Some scary
but there's a lot of scary stuff going on there. There really is. There's even a person that goes out and runs with the military and has become a friend, and he is a veteran, to just try to find out what's going on from a different perspective. And I have been in connection with him as well.
Now, I want to update our listeners here. We are being joined by Margie Taylor. Now, her son, Joey Lenz, died on February 1st of 22 while sleeping in his barracks at Fort Hood. Now, several indicators that could possibly be related to his death, or at least contributed to it, was considered to be a toxic work environment, prescription drug interaction, along with depression and anxiety. Where were you, and how did you receive the news that your son Joey had passed away in his sleep at Fort Hood?
So I was actually at a Woodlands Chamber after hours that evening, and my neighbor called me and wanted to know where I was, my neighbor across the street. And I said I was in the Woodlands, and she said I needed to come home right away. And I said, why? I'm at an event. And she says, there's somebody at your house. I said, well, we don't have people just drop by. I mean, we live in a guarded neighborhood on Lake Conroe, and you have to have permission to go inside to see someone. And for that reason, people just don't normally drop by. And she goes, she was imperative. You need to come home now. I said, okay. So then I started thinking, my ex-husband and I spoke earlier that day, and he said, is Joey in some kind of trouble? And I said, no, I just spoke to him last night. He was fine. He was happy. And he said, well, somebody from the Army is trying to find us. So I said, I wouldn't think anything about that. Well, I started to think about that, what he had told me previously in the day. And so I asked my neighbor, are these people from the Army? And she said, yes, then you need to come home. Right then, I dropped everything, literally, that I had in my hand and got on 45 northbound at 6 o'clock at night, trying to go in and out of traffic. And I called my oldest son, Timmy, and all he said to me was, Joey died, Mom. And he was crying. And there were 2 officers at my house standing in my living room for me to come home to tell me that my son had died. They don't know why. And they said he was sleeping in his barracks. And I told them to leave, quite honestly. I said, You don't know me. You don't know my son. And I want you to leave. Because they couldn't offer anything except that he died. I had called my pastor after speaking to my oldest son as I was driving home. And I said, you need to meet me at my house right away. Joey died. So they only come to your house for one reason. And I knew that before I opened my front door. I will never forget that day.
Were these officers of the U.S. Army?
Yes. Yes. And my husband told me I was rude. I frankly didn't care. I said, I understand you're doing your job, but I need you to leave.
Now, what did the days look like after hearing this news? Was there a scheduled autopsy? Did Fort Hood leadership reach out to you? Did they invite you to the base? Can you kind of walk us through the next few days?
So the very next day, I sat with my casualty assistance officer, who I'm still in touch with almost a year later, who was assigned to me from Fort Hood. And my son, Timmy, also had a CEO person who met us at the house. And we met with them the very next morning, February 2nd. And they told us we would not be able to see Joey for probably a few weeks. I said, that isn't going to happen. I said, I need to see my son now. I want him home. And they said, well, it's going to be a few weeks. And the weather was bad. It was February. There was ice on the road. It was supposed to be 20 some odd degrees all week. I said, I didn't really care. I wanted my son home. And so apparently Tim was assigned to something with his body. I don't know what that's called. So Tim said, whatever my mother wants, I want her to have. And they said, well, it's going to take some time because we need to do his uniform. I said, you don't need to do anything. This is my son. I want my son home. So he was sent to San Antonio for an autopsy. And that Saturday, they were iffy about the weather, but that Saturday they did bring him back. And he's at Forest Lawn, the Woodlands, off 45. And I was there and saw my son for the very last time. I won't ever forget that either.
I am so horribly sorry. I know that I'm sitting here. I have a very wide array of emotions. Very, very sad by this. I mean, I have 4 children myself that I love dearly, and I can only imagine the grief and how this has all played out, and how brave and how strong of a woman you are. And I know your son is shining down on you, and he's very proud of you for standing up and fighting what is, for what's right, and shining a light on perhaps some things that are going on that need to be corrected. Now, there was a autopsy done, and my question is, was this autopsy performed by the U.S. Army, or was this done by an independent examiner?
It was done by the U.S. Army, of course, and it wasn't forthcoming. I did not get the autopsy results. They told me I would have it at the very latest, autopsy, toxicology, 8 weeks. Well, that didn't happen. It wasn't until 4 months that I finally got it. No reason for his death, anything. And because I pushed is how I got answers. I went to the media, and they said they couldn't release any results until CID, the Criminal Investigation Division, was done with their investigation. And so they were given a deadline by the Killeen Daily Herald at a Friday at noon. At 11:15 that day, CID called me and said they were done 45 minutes before their deadline to say they were done with their investigation.
What did the investigation show?
Well, it said that it was a drug interaction intoxication through prescribed drugs and kratom. Kratom didn't kill him. They were saying kratom is illegal on the base. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, but that kratom didn't kill him. His heart was 3 times the normal size. And it said, by the way, he had, I don't know the medical term for it, but basically it was an enlarged heart that was on his autopsy. It's kind of like, and also contributing factor. So I gave this report to an outside medical examiner. He was the medical examiner for Galveston for a period of time, now living in Kingwood. He was recommended to me by 2 different individuals. One was Brett Ligon, our district attorney. This guy looked at it, the narrative, and he says, what you need to be concerned with is the fact that his heart was 3 times the normal size. And that didn't happen overnight. This is something that was ongoing.
Have you ever heard of the term serotonin syndrome?
Yes, I did not before I went to TikTok this year, but several people said that. And they said the mix of his drugs caused serotonin syndrome, the drugs that he was prescribed.
Now, would that have any effect on increasing the size of one's heart?
I'm not a medical expert by any means, but I'm learning more about it. But I was told, yes, he was prescribed fluoxetine, trazodone, cyclobenzaprine, and propanol since Christmas of the year before he died, right before he died, the month before he died. And then I saw he was on extended other medications when I finally got his medical records, which here's what people don't realize. As a mother who lost a child, you don't get anything without fighting for everything. Everything. I have had people reach out to me from all branches of the military, every single branch, saying they lost their mother, brother, sister, brother, spouse, whatever, and they never got answers. Why is that okay? That's the first question I wonder. Why do you have to fight when your loved one volunteers to serve our country as the national line of defense? That's not okay.
Unfortunately, transparency and accountability is a one-way street. It seems as if in the U.S. Armed Forces, as well as in the Department of Veterans Affairs, and oftentimes so many folks that I know, as well as you, don't get the answers, simple answers that they're looking for. That could be that beacon of hope to at least, have that sense of closure, if you will, to find out the whys and in the hows. Now, his heart was enlarged. I believe you said it was 3 times the size it should have been.
That's what the medical examiner told me.
Now, being an active duty soldier, aren't these physicals and these yearly exams, aren't they supposed to perhaps find these medical conditions? I mean, you would think, being in the U.S. Army, they have medical very readily available. And again, you go to sick call, it just doesn't make any sense to me on how they can oversee an enlarged heart that by 3 times and then have him be on certain drugs that were interacting with each other in a way that caused a serotonin syndrome, which is cardiac arrest.
I don't understand it either. As a civilian who's never been in the military, and didn't really know that much, only what my son told me, which he's not going to tell me always these things. He thought his anxiety was due to his environment. But honestly, and he slept a lot. And my husband and I are thinking about this a lot. When he would come home that last Christmas a year ago, he slept a lot. And we thought, he's just being lazy or something. Apparently, he had signs of heart issues then, and we didn't realize it. This has been going on. So what I found out when I got his medical records, which they kept telling me I had no right to because I wasn't his mother and next to kin. But what's weird is, first of all, it says that in the medical records that I am his mother and next to kin, various places in there. They wouldn't have given me his final paycheck or his belongings if I wasn't mother and next to kin. Really? I mean, they wouldn't. So what are they doing here? And why are they holding back information? I finally got his medical records after 6 months, and it was 541 pages. And I scoured every single page to find out something because I knew from day one, my son did not just die. After those officers left my house on February 1st, I text Congressman Brady and I said, I need to talk to you. My son died and there's something wrong with this. Now, Congressman Brady, who just left office and retired this last January, knew that my son was over-medicated March 17th, 2021, because I told him. A lot of that information has been scrubbed from Joey's medical record. He went to the Fort Hood clinic on base March 17th, 2021 for an eye infection. They gave him medications, 4 different medications through an injection that for whatever reason didn't work with him, and it over-medicated him. I did not know that at the time that it was done because they called me that day and asked if they could perform an emergency MRI because I was his mother and next to kin. And I said, absolutely, if you need to do it, but why? And they said, because we think he might have had some kind of brain damage. He's unconscious and can't speak for himself. I said, absolutely, but let me know. Call me back. Well, they never called me back. So many hours later and many phone calls where you call one number to another number to another number. Finally, before midnight that day on March 17th, 2021, I got a hold of an ICU nurse at Darnell Hospital at Fort Hood. She said, your son is here. He's been over-medicated and he's in ICU. Let him sleep. Call him the next day. When I called him the next day, he didn't know why he was hooked up to monitor. He had no idea. They did not tell him. And ironically, when his staff sergeant came to get him to take him back to his barracks, and he was still kind of loopy because he was on medications, the MPs were there trying to arrest him for something he didn't do because, he was in ICU that day. So, yeah, kind of crazy. Yeah, they said he bashed in his roommate's TV. He ended up splitting the costs with his roommate. I don't know what happened. I'll never know. But the fact is, he was over-medicated. And I told Joey we were going to do a congressional investigation. And he said, no, Mom, I'm going to South Korea for a year. Let me just stay in my lane. Well, that never happened. But what I did find out when I got the medical records is that there were indications that he had a problem with his heart. It also said that further follow-up was recommended. Joey was never told there was an issue with his heart, and he was given more medications, and there was no follow-up.
So when you were going through these 541 pages of medical records, was there any missing information that when you're trying to connect the dots here and go from page to page, did it seem as if some of those medical records were missing, or did you see any potential red flags in addition to the, to the follow-ups that were missed?
Well, being someone who's not used to looking at all these medical records and the military terms and all of that, because I really scoured page by page by page. And I put aside the things that didn't seem pertinent. I still have 2 copies of 541 pages. A lot, of course, is redacted, and there are pages missing. I know that because I sent it to my attorney, and he said, we can't have a medical expert look at this yet because there's pages missing. But I said, I still want to go forward and get accountability, because what we do know is he died of a heart issue. We do know that, and we do know there was indications of negligence. And another interesting fact that most people don't realize is that the military has no accountability for medical malpractice or negligence based on the Ferris Doctrine. What's being done about that? And that just means they can do what they want without any accountability. So right now, we did file a claim with the JAG attorney, and they are just holding the claim until I can be deemed mother and next of kin by a judge. So I'm waiting for that to happen. Who knew all this had to happen when your son dies for reasons of a wrongful death?
So let me get this straight. It's been a year, and they still have not classified you as the next of kin and the mother of your son.
Even though it says it in the medical records, and even though it says it in various other military documents that I am the mother next to kin, we have to go to the probate court to be established as the mother next to kin. I have to have 2 witnesses, his best friend, I have to have his brother, his father, and all say I am the mother and next to kin. Oh, and by the way, I am on the birth certificate as his mother and the death certificate. So tell me how this is right.
Oh, it's not. I mean, and this is adding further.
It goes on and on. Yep.
Yeah, this is adding further insult to injury. And yes, you are right. The Ferris Doctrine does protect everybody in the U.S. Armed Forces. They have full immunity.
Yep.
So they don't really, unless you are really advocating for yourself and know that, hey, look, something's not right, they're not going to really follow up with you, because at the end of the day, they're just there to punch the clock too. These people are doing their job. It's, as far as they're concerned, it's not their job to go above and beyond to take care of their, service members. And, unfortunately, it's a very sad state. I get lots of messages every single month, every single week, literally every day of VA medical malpractice, military negligence and malpractice, military sexual trauma, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And at some point, we need to stop this. We need to figure out what is going on and what is causing all of these issues to arise. And if it's leadership, we need to fix the leadership. If it's lack of transparency and accountability, we need to fix that. And really, at the end of the day, this is the mission that Margie Taylor is now taking. Your position is saying, okay, the Ferris Doctrine is real. Okay, but we need to fix the protocols. And, at the end of the day, you are going to be heading to Washington, D.C. this next month to do just that. You are on a crusade to update medical and health protocols for active duty service members. Can you give us some insight on what your mission is and what steps are you going to take in Washington, D.C. to have your voice be effectively heard?
Well, it's a big task, and I'm glad that I have you as a partner helping me facilitate this as someone who's been there, done that. I am one person. I don't know how all this works, but I am doing my best as a mother who will defend my child in life and in death, and what needs to be done to save other lives. I am working on writing the draft of a bill that I would love to have a lawmaker help me facilitate and be a part of. Congressmen, senators, because it's going to take a lot of them. I am hoping to have a meeting with Morgan Luttrell and talk to him about why this is important. And at the very top level of that is that our service members get real annual physicals. When we go as civilians to a doctor, a physician, we have a physical. And I know as I get older, I just had my birthday, you get annual physicals all the time, and they check for EKG and they take your blood pressure. They do lab work, and this isn't anything crazy. There's nothing wrong with me, and I don't mind doing this. EKGs take what, maybe 10 minutes, and they're non-invasive. Why aren't the people that have volunteered to serve our country getting this done? I mean, somebody's going to ask, my physician is going to ask me, how are you feeling? They're going to ask that. That's fine. And I'll say something, but that doesn't stop them from doing the tests.
Mm-hmm.
So why aren't they just being performed? That is the very primary thing. And I do know that it's not happening because they're afraid if you say anything's wrong, you won't deploy. You won't see your family. You won't rank up. You face retribution in one way or another. You know this is true. And it's so simple. Just do it. I mean, your weapon gets better care than the person who pulls the trigger on the weapon. The weapon can't deploy by itself. You need somebody healthy to do that. So why are we sending people off without a physical? And why are our athletes getting better care than those people who serve our country? Just saying.
Those are some great questions, and I think that's a very good example. Well, our service weapons are very well maintained.
Yes.
And
so it's your uniform. Uniform can't have a spot on it. So that's a
very
really understand.
Yes,
had Joey had a physical, the heart issue would have been found. And when they did find the heart issue, when he was over medicated, he should have been medically discharged. Right? I mean, you can't have a heart issue and be in the military. I mean, apparently you can.
Especially a heart that's 3 times the normal size of somebody that is 32 years of age and was considered to be healthy. But again, drug altercations and interactions that cause serotonin syndrome do, at times cause these side effects. And these side effects are very real. And a lot of the times you cannot see these side effects from the outside looking in unless you have that diagnostic testing. And that's where the negligence lies in this case, I believe. Now, you are getting ready to take on a very lonely walk.
Yes.
Taking on the federal government is very difficult. It is a lonely walk. It is a walk that is filled with anxiety. It is filled with depression, and it is filled with fear. But there has to be courage. There has to be great courage involved here. And that's exactly who you are, Margie, is you are a very brave and courageous woman. And I don't know why things happen the way they do. I don't know why God saves others. And I don't know why things happen the way they do. But God knows that you can perhaps make this change that will save the lives of thousands. But unfortunately, it took you losing your son for this to happen. And again, my sincerest condolences because it's not fair and it should have never happened. Now, some of the proposals that you're going to be taking with you to DC are having these annual physicals to require full blood screenings, EKGs, and just a full-on physical, and to have a cap on prescriptions without an intermittent physical or lab work. Can you elaborate on what exactly that means to have a cap on prescriptions without an intermittent physical or lab work?
In January of last year, Joey was on 9 medications. This is a healthy 32-year-old. 9 medications. Now, you know, Brian, what that's like. It's craziness. And there wasn't supposed to be anything wrong with my son. So 9 seems a little excessive. I'm 64. I'm not on 9 prescriptions. You know, I run races and marathons. Joey was running still, doing PT, all of that. So I would say there needs to be a cap. I don't know what that looks like, you know, whether it's 4 or what, but I think you also need to know the interactions of the prescriptions that you're on. There were some mixed interactions going on with what he was prescribed. And how easy is it to pull up someone's medical records when they're in the military? Because it's all in one place, right? Am I correct on that? So it's in one place. So there's really no reason to not see what someone is on and if they interact with each other.
Now, speaking from personal experience, I unfortunately suffered my fate January of 2016, which I nearly died due to negligence and malpractice. I was on 40 pills for years. And unfortunately, some of those pills were anxiety and depression, and the other ones were all pain and neurological type nerve. There was just so much going on in my body. And still to this day, I still unfortunately I'm very medicated, but this scares me, and it really, and it truly does. Now, when I was on all of these pills, we didn't find out until 2 years down the road when my wife received a box of Narcan that stated to her and left her some directions that stated, if your husband goes into cardiac arrest, you need to spray this mist in his nose, because we have found that he is on these 3 anxiety meds, as well as these opioids that can cause a serotonin syndrome type effect or attack, and could essentially kill me. Now, it was at that point, and this had already been after my malpractice and negligence was already to be proven by not only the VA, but by the general counsel. And then they found other loopholes around it to completely deny and deflect my case, which sent me to DC. Now, what you're asking for here is very simple, and that's how these typically work. We're not asking for a lot here, you know. And when my wife said, you need to choose one, you need to choose if you want your pain or if you want your anxiety. And I chose my anxiety meds because my anxiety is very difficult to make it through a lot of my days. I don't know why I have anxiety. I hate it. It's just something that my body has, and I have to manage it. And I now have to manage my pain in other ways. I suffer chronic pain and tons of diagnoses of stuff that's wrong on the inside of my body due to that infection I had. But I have to manage that. And I'm realizing now that it's much easier to manage when you're in a happy sense, when you're in a happy place rather than being in a dark and depressed place. So that's why I've chosen my depression and my anxiety meds over my pain. But again, I can relate when it comes to over medication. I can understand that. I mean, still today, I think I take pills out of 12 different pill bottles, and that's I look back at it and I'm like, man, I can't do this. And so now I'm working very hard to come off a lot of these pills because I want to live a life I want to watch my grandkids grow up. I want to live a healthy, normal life. And that's why I've taken so many measures to try to help myself. But if you don't know that you have something going on inside you, you don't know. And I know if Joey would have known this, he would have taken appropriate measures, and he would have done what it takes to heal himself or to get him out of the Army to begin treatment. Now, you also are looking for counseling with service members or veterans of other interactions, say with alcohol, non-prescription meds, and other substances. And I'm just going down the list here of things that you want to see happening. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, when you're given medications, we're always told don't take it with milk, take it with food, or don't take aspirin with it. You know, why aren't they given that? Why aren't they told that? You know, there needs to be more care for our service members. So the other part of this is, if we're doing all these things while they're actively in the military, I think the cost will be reduced when they're veterans. You know, it's preventive care.
Yeah.
Which lowers the cost of veteran care, right?
I mean, if you're discharged in a healthier state, you know, I mean, you know, there will be less, you know, VA care and, you know, treatment. We have 20.2 million American veterans in this country, and the VA, I think, currently has 11 million patients. You know, and you look at wait times and all that other stuff, obesity, diabetes, you know, and all these other underlying conditions, you know, from, you know, backs and, you know, and everything that's service related. So I do agree with that. You know, they come in healthy, and the mission of the military, even though that you are going to get beat up in the military, because that's what it's all about, if they can at least get you out feeling somewhat normal. I mean, you'll never be normal when you get out, because there will always be ailments. I mean, let's face it, when you're running 20-mile motivational runs with a 40-pound pack with a rifle, and, you know, you're going boots and utes through water and this and that, I mean, yeah, you're going to end up having knee problems, ankle problems, back problems, and all that stuff. But this is deeper than that. This is meds. This is medication. And right now in our country, we are dealing with some very serious consequences of that, I believe, and that is suicide. A lot of the suicides I'm seeing could be attributed by the actual prescription drugs that these soldiers and our service members and women are on. The medication could lead to drug abuse and substance and alcohol abuse. And then they find that toxic leadership, and then it puts them in this sense of hopelessness and helplessness. Another idea you have is any suicidal ideations need to be investigated. They need to be communicated to the chain of command and the closest military peers without retribution. Now, that's not an easy walk either, to say, hey, I think someone's suicidal over here, because if they're not, that's not going to go over well with the guy that's being accused of, you know, being, having those suicidal ideations. But I guess saving a life is more important than somebody's feelings, at that point. Can you elaborate on this?
So the top commander, we went to go see him to get Joey's personal belongings, my oldest son and I, back that first week. And he sat us down and talked to us for 45 minutes to an hour. And he told us, well, Joey went to go see a social worker and came back, and he had thoughts of suicide. And I said, is that so? And I said, but yet you saw him later that afternoon and he was walking around, and you were telling him whether he was going to go to the NTC or whatever it is out in Mojave Desert before you get deployed. And he should not have been, because he was being chaptered out. But so if he was suicidal, why was he walking around? He goes, oh, I didn't say that. I said, but you did say that. You did. And my son, Timmy, confirmed it. He goes, you did say that. So we took it to the lieutenant colonel. He goes, Joey's not suicidal. I said, why would this man tell me that? I said, are you telling me that if somebody is told that they're suicidal, that you don't quarantine them or watch them? So Joey wasn't suicidal, but that got me to thinking that something needs to be done. And if somebody is, so I do know that when we went to his memorial service at Fort Hood on February 24th, in icy conditions, 20 degrees, snow all around us, they were going to call off the installation, but I needed to do it because I knew that most of his company was going to Mojave Desert prior to their being deployment to Europe, and there would be no other day. After we had the memorial service, 30 soldiers got me into a private room at the motor pool and told me stories of goodwill of Joey and how well he was liked. But then they stayed for 3 hours telling me I needed to get justice for Joey. And one young man who knew Joey very well said, I went to our commanding officer several times concerned about Joey. And I was told to stay in line. That's where this came from. He was told to just mind his business for fear of retribution, and they drug tested Joey, which all his drug testing was fine. He didn't have any illicit drugs in his body. That wasn't the issue. The issue was mental anxiety. And so what did they do? They just kept giving him more drugs that apparently didn't interact well together. So several young men came up to me and told me that they were concerned of Joey's mental anguish because he was being targeted by this commanding officer. And we think that that's not a bad thing. But, under normal circumstances, you're going to get some verbal abuse because it's the military and they want you to be strong. And that's okay. But to the extent of its toxicity and hurting you, at what point is it not okay? So that's where this comes from. Joey was not suicidal, but these people came forward and were told to just mind their own business and stay in line. Mental help or anything could have helped Joey as well.
So his mental well-being, according to his friends, it was in jeopardy, correct?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
there was nothing being done. There was the commander or his staff in COIC should have taken the responsibility to get him the help he needed.
That's absolutely correct. And that's another part of what I want to see done. I think it's probably in the next one after this, is that if you see a service member that is impaired physically or mentally, that you have the right to go up the chain of command without retribution.
Now the retribution, that's a big word right there. And I want you to elaborate on that. Why have any other soldiers told you that there could be retribution involved by simply saying, I don't believe this man is mentally fit or this woman is mentally fit for service, so we need to get them the help they need? Why would that create some sort of retribution?
I can tell you 3 people came up to me and told me they were concerned with Joey in this meeting on this February 24th cold day. They said they went forward. They did. I also know that there's a gag order on my name or my son's name in anybody at Fort Hood. And even his closest buddy, who he worked with and went to South Korea, worked next to every day as a generator mechanic, he is now out of the Army and he is still afraid because of what they can do to him. Why is that okay?
So do you feel as if these folks were absolutely ignored?
Yes.
Because of somebody that perhaps may have had it out for your son and wasn't looking after his best interest?
Yes. And yes, absolutely. So this one gentleman who was Joey's closest friend in the Army and is now out was told by CID not to talk to the mother ever. Because as soon as he was interrogated by CID, he tried to call me and he was then stopped by CID for fear of retribution. And he told me that. He said, I waited to talk to you until I was out of the Army because I was not allowed to.
Margie, I hear these stories All the time. And I think people reach out to me because you do a simple Google search and I'm the name and the face of VA policy, unfortunately, because of what happened to me, but the steps I've taken in a positive fashion to invoke positive change within the VA. Now, the biggest concern that I have, people coming forward to me are saying that they are afraid. They are afraid. Now, I'm an American. You're an American. We live in the United States of America. This, in my life, I'm 45 years old. I have never felt a sense of the American people actually being fearful of government. And I am seeing that being the number one concern on top of why they're already contacting me because of what happened to their loved one. And they're just looking for answers and accountability and transparency as well. There is so much that is going on. And of course, I don't hear the good things out there. And I know there's probably a lot of really good things that are happening in the VA and the active duty military service, but they don't call me to tell me how everything is going great for them. They reach out to me as a beacon of hope to give me all of their bad news, to look for, again, a source of encouragement or inspiration, to know that we can have accountability and transparency. It just takes a lot of hard work and dedication and determination and to fight in an honorable way. But Margie, I cannot tell you how many people reach out to me and they are fearful of their government. Are you having this same experience?
I'm being watched every day. I'm being watched every single day by the Army. I know that. I know that for a fact. They have shut down my Facebook profile page. I had to do all kinds of things to get into it again today. And I managed many people's social media, and they locked me out again today. So I have to maintain 2 pages. I don't trust them. They do watch me. They put a child pornography post on my page in October. And I had to make another page and go through Facebook lobbyists to get it back. I have done nothing wrong. Nothing. I mean, I work in public relations. I work to help other people, businesses, community, nonprofits. All I want to do is help save lives and prevent another Gold Star family. That's what I want to do. I didn't even know what a Gold Star mom was until this last year. You know, I didn't know that any of this stuff existed, but I do now. And what I need people to help support me and get me connected to getting meetings with our lawmakers. That's what I need. I need people to see the picture of my son. Let me grab it real quick.
Folks, we're being joined by Margie Taylor, the mother of Specialist Joey Lenz from Conroe, Texas, who died in his sleep 1 year ago in Fort Hood. And there he is, an Army specialist, and the mother, Margie, is searching for answers on why this happened. And fine young gentleman there. And again, Margie, I know that he is shining down on you, and he is with you. And again, it's my pleasure to try to help where I can and try to offer at least a shoulder in an ear to somebody that needs it, and that is you. Again, my sincerest condolences to you and your family, and I pray for your peace, and I also pray that you can make some positive change in the active duty military community when it comes to updating protocols on medical and health decisions that are made by doctors and clinicians at that level. But we're up against time here. And again, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today, Margie.
So I have a page, Forever 32, in memory of Joey Lenz. I will be starting a GoFundMe. I don't always believe in those, but I need to start getting some kind of funding to go to DC and fight the fight for everyone else.
I will be, I will add that page, and we will see what type of support that we can get behind you to rally behind your son, Specialist, the U.S. Army Specialist Joey Lenz. We sincerely appreciate everything you have done and continue to do in the military and veteran community. Your service, sacrifice, and dedication to our great nation is truly admirable. Now, folks, remember to stay inspired, stay encouraged, stay motivated, and always stay in the fight. Until next time, for Today with Tally, this is Brian Tally. Good night.